My pass beeped and flashed red, as if ashamed of me, and the door to the lobby wouldn't open. The guard didn't look me in the eye, he just swallowed and asked me to step back. On the screen above the reception, where the video about our funds usually played, another video started playing: the corridor, the phone, my voice, torn from the night meeting. If this tender is foiled, we'll find another way. I recognized myself and didn't recognize my life. Sir, the board's directive, I apologize, said the second guard and asked for the keys to the service elevator. The lobby was crowded with visitors, assistants, brokers in ties who had suddenly become reporters with phones. My driver pushed his cap back on his head, as if at a funeral. I didn't remember his face. I counted my heartbeats, because only they sounded honest. In the conference room on the 30th floor sat the independent auditors, whom I had hired myself last year for someone else's scandal. Now their folders lay like knives, neatly arranged. The chairman of the council did not get up. The recording that was leaked this morning is accompanied by contracts with your signatures, dated 2 weeks earlier than the official procedure. I was handed a copy. The signature was mine, the handwriting, the slant, the nervous tale of the letter that I had hated since childhood. But the date was impossible. That day I was in the hospital with my mother. I know the smell of disinfection better than the smell of my own office. It's a montage, I said. Prove it, and we'll remove suspicion. The counselor answered responsibly in the businesslike tone of a waiter. The phone vibrated, an unknown number, but a short text that spoiled the air in the room. I'm sorry. Otherwise you wouldn't have stopped. Signature Ilya. My brother, who in the fall had asked me for access to the archives for his family history, and wore his father's watch like a relic that jingled on his wrist when he was nervous. You! I dialed it immediately. His voice was soft, like a step on a thick carpet. It's not against you. It's against who you've become. Did you forge my signature? There was a pause, and I heard him inhale. I just opened the window. The rest is fresh air. You don't understand what you've done. You either. By the time I came out, the press already knew my name better than I did. Microphones, flashes, questions that offered only options for my guilt. Messages poured into my phone, lawyers, partners, former friends who had turned into cautious shadows. My mother wrote, "Son, don't come today. There are journalists standing outside the house." I stopped in the cold wind at the entrance, and only then did I feel my watch slip off my wrist, my parents' watch, the one my brother and I shared from memory. It fell onto a stone and fell silent. For the first time in many years, I felt like I wasn't even in control of my own time. And I began to listen. Only one question rang louder than the cries of the city. Had I not built this height myself so that falling would be spectacular? A week later, I looked at my face on TV, like a strange man who should have been kicked out of the house long ago. Reporters were building versions, showing footage from yachts, negotiations, meetings where I stood next to people who were now called a corruption ring. I heard phrases like theft of documents, shadow assets, offshore funds. Everything I had once destroyed from my competitors was now lying on my desk. All of this was served with the sauce of my guilt, and no one asked if I had really signed those agreements. I collected evidence. I called lawyers, former accountants, IT specialists. Everyone answered with the same coldness. "We are sorry, Mr. Arson, but we can no longer cooperate with you." One even added, "We don't want our children to lose their jobs because of you." People who yesterday called me a market legend, today avoided even my views. My silence became a contagious disease that they ran from. When the searches came, I no longer felt anger, only alienation. My office, once smelling of coffee and leather, was now filled with the smell of latex and dust. They pulled out flash drives, copied disks, counted bundles of documents I had never seen. One detective, a young man with the face of a son I might have had, looked at me and said quietly, "Someone set this up a long time ago. Very clever." I didn't know if it was sympathy or a warning. My mother was silent. I drove to her house at night, without a driver, and found her sitting in the dark. I knew he wouldn't last. She said of Ilya. He was always jealous of you, but not of your money. Your confidence was what broke him. I looked at an old photo of us standing in the yard as children, he with a ball, me with a book. He didn't want to destroy me. I whispered. He wanted to be heard. She nodded. But he did it in the most painful way. The next morning I got word from the board of directors. I had been officially removed from all my positions. The stock had fallen, investors were demanding an explanation, the press was tearing my name apart again, this time as a symbol of my downfall. The lawyer said, "The only thing that can save you is a public admission of wrongdoing. People love repentance. But I didn't want to be an icon of repentance. I wanted the truth, whatever it was." When I got home, the door to my office was open. On the table was a flash drive and a short note. "Watch. But be prepared." I recognized my brother's handwriting. When I played the video back, I saw that it wasn't a fake, it was real footage. Me, drunk after a corporate party, shouting in a private club, threatening to fire me, giving orders I don't remember. Everything was recorded by a surveillance camera that we had once installed for security. Whoever leaked the first video simply waited for me to give him the weapon. I turned off the screen and sat there for a long time until it became clear. I was not killed by strangers. I did it myself, step by step over years. Ilya only pressed the button. In the window, the dawn seemed like a mockery, as if the light had no right to fall on someone who had sold himself so cheaply. I found her in the most unlikely place, in the basement of an old theater where I used to bring VIP clients to private screenings, because there was a sonic resonance there that was unlike anything else in the city. She sat on a dusty stage among burnt posters, holding a dusty file disc that glowed as if a small echo of my guilt lived inside it, and as I climbed the stairs, her face remained familiar but different. As if familiarity had survived the destruction and emerged stronger on the other side. She was someone I had once seen as a statistic in my own empire, a former IT engineer I had fired 2 years ago for optimization, and she was now smiling as if there was no more room for resentment between us, and her voice was neither soft nor harsh, just matter-of-fact. "You still don't know who owns the mirror." She showed me files that shattered my ideas about the chronology of events and the people who were there when I thought I alone was in control of my destiny. There were letters, edited audio recordings, payment hashes, but most importantly, there was a scheme that stretched beyond our market, in which my brother Ilya was not the main developer of the conspiracy, but its victim, a pawn in a long game of other people's interests that used brotherly envy as the key to the mechanism. I held in my hands a document that proved that the signature that had driven my world so much had passed through the third link of the autorecorder, adjusted to the template of my handwriting, but I could not accept it immediately. The truth seemed like a naked blade in the hands of a person who had no intention of planting it in her heart, but had let me hold it. "You could have left forever," she said, and there was neither reproach nor regret in her words, only that which had pragmatic weight. "Stay. Do what you have to do, but not the way you always do." I remembered those nights when I thought I was infallible, when there were no solutions, only their justification. I thought of Ilya, who had asked for simple things, attention, recognition, the right to his story, and how I had responded with the coldness and success that had always been the goal, because the goal justified the methods. She gave me the key to a server hidden in a department I had once closed with the word archive, and there, in those binary rows, was an account that had signed orders in my name on the eve of the scandal. The account had been created with fake data and was connected to a network that worked for people who had more motives than simply destroying my business. They wanted to remove me as a threat to their grand plan. When I woke up from the chill of realization, she took my wrist and placed my father's watch, which had not yet lost its ticking, on it, and said so quietly that I felt it inside. "Now you know. Now the choice is not about whether to let your conscience be redeemed or your reputation be cleared. The choice is about whether you have the courage to answer to others, even if it destroys what is still good." I returned to my office, not as a master, but as a ghost coming to finish a job that was supposed to finish him. The building was silent, smelling of cold metal and betrayal. My portraits had already been removed from the walls, the nameplates had been erased from the doors, but I could still feel the space breathing me in. Every floor, every elevator, every seam in the carpet remembered the footsteps of a man who believed he owned everything. I understood that none of this had ever belonged to me, only a rent for fame paid for by other people's fears. When I activated the internal server, the screen lit up with dozens of correspondences, signatures, orders that proved that the conspiracy did not begin in my home. The people I shared the desks with, the ones who called themselves friends of the company, had coordinated the forgery through a shell company, using my brother as nothing more than the first pawn in a long game. I stopped the recording, looked at my reflection in the monitor, and whispered, "This is what you look like when God disappears from your system." I gathered all the evidence, letters, audio, logs. Then I dialed my brother's number. He didn't answer for a long time, but finally a voice came out, tired and muffled. "If you called to curse me, it's too late. I've already done it myself." "No, Ilya," I answered slowly. "I called so you could hear the truth. You didn't destroy me, you saved me." We met that same evening in an old park by the river, where children used to chase balls. The wind tore the leaves, the lights flickered, as if the world itself didn't know whether to illuminate this moment. I handed him the flash drive. "It's all here. Names, accounts, signatures. We're just pawns." He flinched, took a step back. "And what now?" "Now I'm going to the press. Not as a victim. Not as a culprit. As someone who understood." "You'll be destroyed," he said quietly. "Maybe. But for the first time in my life I'm not afraid. Because once you've seen the truth, loss is no longer terrible." I went on stage in front of the cameras the next morning. Without a suit, without an image, without people who wrote me speeches. I spoke for a long time, without paper. I admitted everything I had really done: cruelty, indifference, narcissism. I also talked about what I hadn't done, about forgeries, manipulations, attempts to destroy my name with the hands of others. I spoke not to clear myself, but to finally take off the mask I had worn for half my life. When I finished, the hall was silent. Only one camera flash lit up and went out. In that light, I saw my own silhouette, not a businessman, not a billionaire, but a man who had not run away for the first time. As I stepped out of the building, I felt the rain. Small drops fell on my hands, mixing with sweat and fear. And suddenly it seemed to me that this was not rain. This was the world finally washing away from me everything I had never been. 3 months passed. My name was still in the headlines, not as a symbol of power, but as a warning. A case was opened against me, but when the materials from the flash drive were made public, the wave of noise was replaced by a deafening silence. Those who shouted the loudest suddenly disappeared from the public space. Some friends emigrated, others fell ill with sudden memory loss. The world I had built for years turned out to be a fragile theater where actors played as long as my money illuminated them. I left the city. I sold everything that still had value and went to the village, where my father's old house had long stood. There was no signal, no cameras, no mirrors in which you could only see half of yourself. Only the river, the pines, and the air that smelled of earth. I was learning all over again, to get up without a call, to brew coffee from a machine other than the office machine, to listen to the silence that didn't require excuses. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing a goal, I was just breathing. One morning, Ilya arrived. Without warning. He was standing at the gate, holding a new watch in his hands. "I found someone who signed for you," he said. "But that doesn't matter anymore, does it?" I was silent. Because it really was a lot. He put the watch in my palm. "Your time has returned." I smiled. "No. It has finally stopped where it was supposed to stop, with us." We were sitting by the river, and he asked, "Do you regret it?" I thought for a long time. "Yes. But not about losing money. I regret not seeing people for so long, only numbers. You know, Ilya, the greatest evil is not in what we do, but in how we justify ourselves when we do. He nodded silently, and I realized that this time he heard me without struggle, without envy, without the past. When he left, I stayed sitting on the shore until sunset. The light touched the water, as if cleansing it of everything that was. I thought about everything I had and lost, about all the doors that had closed. And I realized the main thing: I don't want to return anything anymore. Because sometimes falling is not a punishment, but the only way back to myself. I am no longer rich. But I am alive again. And if I have to start from scratch, I will start. But this time without empires, without thrones, without the worship of success. Only with the truth. Because the truth is the only thing that doesn't fall apart, even when you fall. And perhaps that's where true wealth lies.